Well, hey guys, thanks for watching. Today we have Brian Stubbs with us, a linguist who has taught at Utah State University Eastern. He's best known for his book, Uto-Aztecan, Comparative Vocabulary there. In this video, we just want to go over the basics of what Uto-Aztecan is, what it means today to people who speak it, and some of the history behind it. So, Brian, thanks for coming with us.
Thank you.
How did you personally get interested in linguistics, languages, Uto-Aztecan?
Yeah, I spent 2 years attempting to learn Navajo, found out how easy all the other languages were compared to it. And that's when I dove into a whole bunch of others, Spanish, Hebrew, Arabic. I looked at a lot of language families and I found a lot of interesting things in Uto-Aztecan that interested me. And so that's the language family I focused on. And Uto-Aztecan, we have a map available here. The best way to get a picture of it is simply look at that. Uto-Aztecan is a language family of Native American languages. A lot of them are in the U.S. Southwest, goes up to Idaho and Wyoming, and all of those are out of the Los Angeles area. Then we have a number of languages along the west coast of Mexico. And then we have the Nahua, or the Aztecan dialects or languages scattered through central and southern Mexico and points further south. It's one of the larger language families and spread quite a bit geographically.
What are the other main language families here?
In North America, Uto-Aztecan is a large one. The Algonquian languages in the Northeast, Great Lakes region, they're quite expansive too. They go a lot of southern Canada and a lot of the Northeast United States. Those are two of the larger ones. There's also Na-Dene that Navajo belongs to.
Yeah, I'm half Navajo, and it's only been fairly recently where I've kind of learned that the language comes from up north, right?
Right. It's found in Alaska, Western Canada, and then we have outliers like Navajo and various Apache dialects are all very closely related because they came fairly recently. Some people say as late as 80, 1500, but it was a lot earlier than that. I think it was more like 1000 AD.
Okay.
The Siouan language family is pretty sizable in the plains. There are a lot of smaller ones. California, for example, there are many small language families.
How did Uto-Aztecan begin? When and where?
Both of them are good questions on which there's no consensus. Not everybody agrees.
Okay.
The time depth is generally put at 5,000 years back, but there's evidence that it might have been only half of that. Also, as far as where it originated, of course, they used to think everything came from Asia and going south. So they used to think it started in the United States or the border area and came south. There are three of us linguists, however, who cite evidence that would suggest the other direction, that it might have started in Mexico and gone north. But, hey, there's arguments both ways, and there's not any agreement on that yet.
Eventually, it would spread out,
Yeah,
and you have, I think, northern Uto-Aztecan and southern.
right.
What's the differences? Why do they separate them?
It appears to many linguists, not all linguists agree with that either,
Mm.
that there's a major division between northern Uto-Aztecan and southern Uto-Aztecan. And in the northern Uto-Aztecan, there are four branches, and all of the northern Uto-Aztecan branches came out of the Los Angeles area originally. They spread from there because the reason linguists can tell that is because the diversity in Southern California is much greater. And Southern Uto-Aztecan are the other seven branches. And they are quite different phonologically and have changed quite a bit more than the Northern Uto-Aztecan languages have. And that makes a number of us think that the time depth in Mexico is older. They seem to have been there and changing a longer time than those in Northern Uto-Aztecan. And that's why we think that, hey, there's an argument to be made that they spread from south to north.
Let's focus more on the northern Uto-Aztecans, just because we live in Utah and that's important for us here. One thing I've wondered is I've done some videos about the ancient Fremont peoples, but do we know anything about what the Fremont people would have spoken or these other peoples?
I can tell you my best guess. Yeah, in the books, you look up Fremont, and they don't know what language they spoke, and they don't know what happened to them. But I've looked at the archaeology of the Fremont, and it is very similar to the Hopi. And the Hopi were originally much over a much bigger area than they are now. And the Fremont were simply just north of that. So my personal opinion is that the Fremont were simply a relatives of the Hopi.
Mm-hmm.
And the Nummic people, the Utes and the Shoshone, and those are the Nummic peoples, they spread out from Southern California later after the Hopi, but they covered more area and they kind of pushed the Hopi south a little bit. And they probably mixed with the Fremont. But I think the Fremont were, if not relatives of the Hopi, they were at least partially relatives of the Hopi, or were of the same kind of culture and lifestyle. So we don't know for sure, but that seems like a decent possibility, possibly probability in my mind anyway.
So it's possible that the Fremont spoke a form of
Of
Uto.
Uto-Aztecan, that's very possible. Not certain, but very possible.
The Fremont were here, and then Numic, is it Numic or Numic?
Hmm. Either way, it actually is in Uto-Aztecan. It's pronounced num, numi,
Okay.
numi.
I'll say Numic.
Namek, yeah, Namek is close enough.
They come into the area around 1000
Yeah,
AD or something like that.
yeah, somewhere between 500 and 1000 AD, a little bit after the Hopi.
And then you also said earlier that the Navajo came into the area.
Yeah, and they came from the north.
The Athabascan people are coming in from the north. The Numic people come in from California area. After everything settles, what are those tribes today?
The Namek that spread from Southern California out into the Great Basin, those are the Utes and the Shoshone, and they were, neighbors and mixing with each other quite a bit, so that a lot of the Utes would have Shoshone blood, and the Shoshone would have Ute blood, and lots of other things. And then we have Paiute, that's also closely related to those others. And then we have Kawaisu in Southern California, that's part of that branch.
I mean, is there any comparison for how a Ute would understand a Shoshone? Like, is that like an English person talking to an Australian person, or is it more?
They're closely enough related that they could understand each other.
Okay.
But between the Shoshone and the Utes, they could understand each other to a degree, I should say. They would be more different than within the same branch, but they're close enough that he'd recognize that they have a lot of the same words, even if they couldn't fully understand each other. They could partially understand each other.
And Hopi.
And Hopi is another branch of Uto-Aztecan.
Mhm.
And I'm sure when the Hopi were next to the Namek, they could see that they shared some words in common, but they wouldn't be able to understand each other. They're different enough, and both had changed enough that they wouldn't be able to understand each other.
So how do linguists kind of reconstruct these ancient languages?
Linguists have studied most of the languages of the world, and they get an idea of how sounds change over time. And has a lot to do with establishing a language family. When what you've got is the ancient language, and then you have these descendant languages, and you have an ancient word, and you have these descendant words. And because linguists kind of know the tendency of how sounds change, they can look at these changed results in today's languages, and going backwards can reconstruct what the original word probably looked like. And they are simply, those reconstructions are educated guesses. Sometimes when a new language is discovered, they'll adjust their reconstruction because here's another feature that we hadn't seen in these other 8 descendant languages, and so they'll have to adjust their reconstructions. But basically, that's how they do it, and it works quite well. I mean, they're probably hitting 90-95% being right most of the time, to a decent degree. Uh, Not 100%, but hey, to a decent degree.
You said there was tendencies for words to shift. Does that mean there's patterns and that these are kind of universal that we
Yeah.
see?
Yeah, the patterns are many are typical patterns. I mean, you see it in language family after language family, and very often the beginnings of words will be dropped and the ends of words will be dropped is one thing that's common to a lot of language change. For example, knife. It was originally canifa. I mean, you pronounce all the vowels like Spanish and pronounce all the consonants, and that's usually what Old English sounded like. So it was originally canifa, but we dropped the initial K because it's hard to say K and N together, and we dropped the final silent E. All of those silent E's did not used to be silent. The reason they're there is because they used to be pronounced.
Yeah. Final question is just how does understanding linguistics help us better understand history in Native Americans today?
Yeah, linguistics can tell us a lot about who's related to who and how far back, and give us lots of hints as to that kind of thing. Think knowledge that would be lost if it weren't for linguistics. For example, I don't know that the Cora or the Huichol down in Mexico would know that they're related to the Hopi and the Utes, unless without the linguistic research showing that they are related. So, yeah, linguistics can contribute to finding out who's more closely related to who.
So when we lack some, if we lack some archaeological evidence or written evidence, we could use linguistics to help us kind of solve some of the puzzle.
Right. It would contribute to adding another dimension of knowledge. It wouldn't answer all the questions, but it could answer some.
Well, thanks, Brian. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.